our Saturday evening live stream. It's been an epic week for gaming news, and this week is even more jam-packed than last week. This week we're joined by some incredible guests. So let me do some intros, and then we'll go straight into the show. So first of all, let me start with Asa Walker, who is keeping things afloat. How are you doing, sir?
I'm devastatingly sad because we've opened up the stream and I've already spotted a problem with it that I'm going to be correcting as we go, but that's okay. It's a minor one, Gaz. It's just your camera doesn't quite fit its frame, and that's the kind of thing that's just going to haunt me all night. So I'll be fixing that in a moment. But apart from that, I'm really good, really happy to have these two guests. We've had Heather on the show before, obviously, and she's always got loads of fascinating insight for us. No pressure, Heather. And of course, we've got Alexander as well, so it should be a good one.
Yes, no, absolutely. So before we go into our two amazing guests, so introduce myself. I'm Gaz, owner of GameOnDaily, and I'm joined by Sham, who's also joined us before, part of the GameOnDaily team. How are you doing, Sham?
Good, yeah, not bad. It's, yeah. Feeling hot, really hot in this room.
Yeah, it's all the weird like strip club lights that we've got in the background.
Green.
This week we're joined by Alexander, who is a developer and the creator actually of TerraGenesis, a really popular game on PC and mobile. Alexander, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. Just working. But yeah, glad to be here.
Glad to have you on board as well. And again, returning to our stream, we're so happy to have you, Heather Johnson from Here Poor Player, and also a developer at working with Alex on TerraGenesis. How are you doing, Heather?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I work TerraGenesis during the day, and then on weekends and free time, I'm at Hey Poor Player. So to explain that.
So guys, if you haven't checked it out before, check out Hey Poor Player. Their content appears on GameOnDaily.com. It's a great site, and they have a particular focus on indie games as well. So you should really definitely check that out. We'll talk about indie games later on in the show as well. We'll close off with some really cool ones and ones that Heather has reviewed as well. So yeah, let's go into that. But before we go into that, because we've got Alex, who is a dev working on a big game, tell us about TerraGenesis. I've got it downloaded, but I want you to have a word with the people about TerraGenesis and what it's about, and also your background as well, Alex.
So TerraGenesis is a mobile game that I developed originally just on iOS, but since then we've brought it to Android and Windows as well. Mm-hmm. And basically the premise is it allows you to land on a planet or moon like Mars or Venus or Mercury, and you can build cities and eventually terraform the planet. And for anybody who doesn't know, terraforming is where you take a dead planet like Mars, where you have to wear a spacesuit to survive, and you thicken the atmosphere, you add oxygen, you add water, eventually you add life, and you turn it into a planet like Earth, where you can just live openly out on the surface. So the whole thing is based in real science. I used real data from NASA, real maps for all the planets and moons.
Wow.
And I made it in my spare time, released it in the summer of 2016, and we got over 1 million downloads in our first year. And since then, it's just gotten crazier. And we actually just, I think like a week or two ago, passed the 20 million mark.
20 million mark?
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah,
I saw 10 million on Android store alone, so I imagine it'd be quite high. So
that's right up my street, that kind of game.
As soon as it said terraforming,
I was like, that's great.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, that's amazing.
I was going to say, where did that idea come from to terraform stuff? Because that's a very specific, particular thing. Is it science fiction? Is terraforming a science fiction?
I mean, it hasn't happened yet, so I guess by default it's science fiction. But really, everything related to it is based on scientific facts, so it's just a matter of, would you call landing on Mars science fiction? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
But really, it's going to happen any day now, so.
Yeah.
Terraforming is something that has always fascinated me, and I've played various games like Master of Orion and that sort of thing where you can terraform, but it's usually just like a push-button action. Yeah. It's like, spend 500 gold to terraform this planet, and it'll take 7 turns. And that always seemed to me like it was missing the point, because terraforming is complicated. And in particular, one of the things that fascinated me about terraforming is it's what I've started referring to as Goldilocks gameplay. Because the idea is that a planet that's too hot is no better than a planet that's too cold. It has to be right in the middle. But that is true for temperature and air pressure and oxygen and it just goes on and on and on. And that is a gameplay mechanic. It's don't go too far this way, don't go too far that way. You got to keep it right in this zone with multiple plates spinning at once. And so basically I just sort of assumed somebody would make this game. And then one day I looked up and realized that I had become a good enough developer that I could make this game. So I guess I'll make this game.
So did you initially create that yourself when you first started in 2016?
Yes. Yeah, I had been I taught myself how to be a developer, and I just started making apps in my spare time. TerraGenesis was actually my 25th app on the App Store.
Wow.
And that's in addition to the go into the office jobs that I ended up getting as a developer. And TerraGenesis I made just entirely in my spare time. And to be honest, I had already started working on my 26th app when I released TerraGenesis because I didn't know that it was going to take off. And then all of a sudden, like a week later, I went and looked at my stats and I was like, wait a minute, what's happening?
Now's the time to buy my yacht. There we go.
Yeah.
No,
so I just jumped into TerraGenesis full time, and it's been a wild ride ever since.
So is that your full-time gig now, TerraGenesis?
Yeah. So actually, we released TerraGenesis while my wife and I were living in New Zealand for 7 months, which was insane. And so I was on my 11-inch MacBook Air, frantically trying to fix bugs and push up updates on hotel Wi-Fi. And 7 months later, we got back to the US. And at that point, my wife stepped in and said, listen, you're so busy doing code that you don't actually have time to do hiring and talk to lawyers and that sort of stuff. So my wife stepped in as the business head of the company, and we started Edgeworks Entertainment here in Los Angeles. Before long, we hired Heather, who is excellent. And now we're a company of 8 people now, I think. 7 or 8 people. Yeah.
I think one interesting thing that I've noticed is I'm doing a little bit of research into your company. It's called Edgeworks Entertainment, not Development. And that's there for a reason.
Yes.
And this is going back to your filmmaking days or your aspiration of filmmaking. Can you just explain to what you've done? Because I know what you've done, but explain where the root lies with that name.
Yeah, so Edgeworks Entertainment formally started as a legal entity in 2017. But I've actually been using that name since about 2005. And it's just been kind of the name that I put on everything that I make. Going back to a web series that I made called the Codex, which was a Halo 2 Machinima series, which, if anybody's familiar with Red vs. Blue was the most popular Machinima series, and we were actually number 2. Yeah. And they were kind of South Park's... Sorry?
You were more serious than Red vs.
Exactly.
Blue. I remember the Codex.
Yeah, so Red vs. Blue was sort of like South Park comedy, and we were more in line with the style of Halo itself. So we were action, drama, sort of sci-fi, fighting aliens kind of stuff. And the Codex I made my senior year of high school, and it went absolutely insane. We got 90 million views over a 20-episode series. I was interviewed by NPR, the National Public Radio here in the US. We were actually on the cover of a magazine in England. We were all over the place, and it was an incredible experience. But the problem was that it was made using Halo, which means that you can't sell stuff. You can't sell DVDs. You can't make money from this.
Yeah.
Red vs. Blue, the reason that they are Rooster Teeth, I think they've got a studio lot now in Austin. It's ridiculous. And the reason that was possible is because they made a deal with Bungie. They actually licensed Halo so they could sell DVDs and all this kind of stuff. We were a bunch of high school kids that nobody wanted to give the time of day, so we didn't get that deal. So eventually I had to move on. But
did that not open any doors? Just the popularity of it? Did that not open any doors? The sheer popularity
I mean, I guess not. I don't know what happened. I actually flew up to Seattle at one point and knocked on Bungie's front door, and they refused to meet with me. I kept trying to be like, hey, you guys, you already did it once. Like, all I'm asking for is that same deal so that I can keep doing this. And they just, they weren't interested.
But are you looking to, because the entertainment name still exists, is that a sign that you want to maybe venture back into film? Or that kind of...
Absolutely. The Edgeworks Entertainment, we're going to be doing games, but we've also got, podcasts that we want to do, and YouTube shows, and eventually TV shows and movies. So there's a lot going on, and it's pretty exciting.
I wish you the best of luck with it all. That sounds really good. I know we talked about this very briefly before the show started. Developers tend to be, nose to monitor and don't really venture forward. But I'm not sure if you've managed to catch up with the earth-shattering news in the gaming industry. We're obviously front and center because this is what GameOnDaily is about. We bring the gaming news. And I'm sure you, unless you're living under a rock, Alex, I'm sure you heard something about the Xbox Series X.
Yes.
The Xbox Series X, the prices finally got revealed, and it's made big news. And I know you're traditionally a developer that produces games on mobile and PC, but what are your thoughts on the Xbox platform or console platform? Because after all, you did, Codex, Halo Codex was based on Halo, which is primarily, I know it came out on PC, but it was an Xbox game.
Yes.
But do you follow the Xbox platform, console? Sorry, do you follow the console platform?
Yeah, as a player, for sure. I've got an Xbox One and a PlayStation. And yeah, there will always be a special place in my heart for Halo because of all that. And yeah, it looks really exciting. Xbox continues their quest to make the most confusing names possible.
Yes.
Whereas PlayStation is like, it's the fifth one, we'll call it the PS5. Xbox is like, the third one is called One, and then we're going to have the Xbox One S followed by the Xbox Series X, which is like just, I use Mac, and so I guess I'm used to all of their programs being named super generic things like Mail and Pages and Numbers, which makes it really hard to search for stuff like problem with numbers, and you're going to get a bunch of math tutorials. But man, looking up articles about different Xbox generations is tricky. But yeah,
do you think that will confuse people? Do you think that will confuse would-be moms and buyers with the name?
I hope not, but I kind of wonder, especially with the Xbox One X and the Xbox Series X and like that sort of thing. It was easy enough to be like, okay, the Xbox One does not mean the first Xbox. That's two different things. But yeah, I wonder if there aren't some kids that are going to get the wrong thing for Christmas, and that's going to be a shame. But no, it's very exciting to see the kind of stuff they're coming out with. That is, as a player, I'm always excited for the next generation, just like everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. We really are. Heather, you mentioned, I think you're primarily a PlayStation gamer more than Xbox, right? Are you excited about the new Xbox? Or
I mean, I don't know what gave you that idea. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had the original Xbox. It was a gift from like my parents. But as far as like Xbox news, I don't really follow it. Like,
yeah, but what about the pricing on the form factor? You've seen the price for it.
I want to talk more about how Xbox handled the leak, because that, as a community, community and marketing, like, that's a nightmare, and someone did a really great breakdown on Twitter of just how they actually managed to kind of spin this into a positive. You remember like the price leaked and Xbox released the little monkey going like,
the little eye.
Yeah. That was like, they were up at 3 a.m. trying to contain this, right? I mean, the team just launched into action. And then they had some follow-up tweets and they had some follow-up information. And just the way that they conveyed that, it was like, it was really well done. It was a really well done reactive strategy. But in terms of like being on this side of game development, I mean, I know if that happened to me, I'd probably be like shitting my pants. Like, this is not a fun experience.
No, there was a lot of work went into it, and recently, this morning or today, or maybe it was like yesterday evening, they showed off. So Phil Spencer was there having it filmed. They filmed the reveal, and a lot of work clearly went into that, and all that kind of has gone down the toilet because of the leak. So I do feel for Xbox, but at the same time, it's been so bloody long since we've got this reveal. We've been waiting for ages.
Oh, I know. It's just on the game dev side, it's like working through a lockdown has been so hard. I mean, it's been hard for everybody. Yeah. And so like on the player end, I'm like, look, I get it. We've been waiting. What's the price? And even PlayStation's been holding out too. And so from the player end, I'm like, I totally understand. Christmas is coming around the corner. Like, what are we going to do? But then like as game dev lockdown, we're like, so is everyone's sanity okay? Like, have you taken the time to like, not cry for 5 minutes? Like, it's been hard.
Yeah, so... we do a lot of checking in with our team to make sure nobody's having a nutty.
Oh, that's good. Our HR department sends us an email once a month. It's like almost automated. Are you alive?
Just on no and see what happens.
On the inside, I'm not so sure, is what I reply with. Moby and Jet, thank you for joining us in chat. Moby says, Heather is now my favorite person. Sorry, Gaz, because she's a PlayStation fan. So yeah, you've already got fans, but I wouldn't celebrate too much. If you change console allegiances, he will change like that.
I've never changed console.
I want to underline how big a PlayStation fan Heather is. With a little story from the first time we met, which was Heather. Yeah, Heather knows where this is going. Heather had been recommended by somebody that we had worked with. As somebody who might be good to work at Edgeworks. And so we called her in for an interview, and she had been pitched to us as basically the walking encyclopedia of video games. Like the biggest gamer in any room that she walks into. And so she had mentioned that, she likes Civilization. I'm a huge Civilization fan. And I started asking her about Civilization and a few other games. And she goes, well, here, let me, just as an example, she reaches into her purse and pulls out, I think the first one was a PSP, and shows off something. And we're like, oh, you just had that walking around? I mean, I guess that's fine. It's portable. She reaches in and pulls out a Nintendo Switch. And I'm like, you have more than one game console in your purse at a time? And she's like, well, I have more than that. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a PlayStation 4 that she was just carrying around with her. Did you just buy that? And she's like, no. What is it doing in your purse?
I had plans.
So that's how big a PlayStation fan Heather is, that she walks around with a PlayStation 4, I assume at all times.
Wow. I also had a DS and a Game Boy Color in there.
Yeah.
But the PSP is that's how I know you're a big fan. Is when
if you have one, if it exists.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget consoles. You need to share this bag technology.
Heather in her bag of holding.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. It was just like and a PSP, and there's if you had an Xbox One, then I know you were lying because there's no way that Xbox One is making it. Or a power
she's the video game answer to Mary Poppins.
I'm like a bag lady because my purse has to be that big to be able to carry these things.
That's so cool though. That's really cool. That's wicked. But even though you're a PlayStation fan, Heather, then you would have also followed this thing on the price. And in the US, it's $299. That surely is a very, very enticing price for what is a next-gen console. And as a, let's say, PlayStation fan, do you think that price will cause Sony or PlayStation any trouble when it comes to its PlayStation 5 as far as launch is concerned?
I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting it to be at a $300 price point. That's really good, right?
Yeah.
But I do know, like, just historically speaking, like, PlayStation has always loved to go last. They never do well when they go first. right? The first time it happened in 1992 at CES, when they went and announced that they were going to join with Nintendo to make the Nintendo CD. And then the next day, Nintendo was like, oh no, we're partnering with Philips actually.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when Sony learned, like, never go first.
But really,
So,
that actually gave birth to the PlayStation. If it wasn't for
it did.
That,
Yeah.
But the other thing that PlayStation likes to do is they often like to present themselves as sort of the premium console, like the really nice one. I remember in the last generation, the Xbox One and the PS4, I remember being an Xbox One person, and the PS4 was bragging about, I think they had a Blu-ray player from launch built in and stuff like that. Like they often position themselves as that kind of it might cost a little more, but it's worth it kind of console.
Yeah. No, I think
continuation the same.
I think with the PlayStation 4, it was cheaper than the Xbox One, despite it being more powerful. So that just compounded the problem for Xbox. Yeah, because the Xbox came in with
Alexander's talking about the PlayStation 3 generation. That's the one that had the Blu-ray advantage. So the Xbox 360 didn't have. And PlayStation 3 was.
The problem here is that I'm 1,000 years old. It's hard for me to remember console generations.
So maybe Sony's naming convention is too complicated.
So I know you're primarily PC and mobile, but there's a debate. I don't know if you followed, Alex, going on right about now with the Xbox Series S. That's a console that's obviously weaker than everything. It's like a stripped down version of its daddy, the Xbox Series X. So confusing. So it's less powerful than the PlayStation 5 as well, because it's stripped down. And one of the questions, I don't know, if you've been following it, but the Xbox Series S has less RAM, for instance, and people are talking about scalability, and that's not a problem because games scale all the time. But do you think something like the Xbox Series S with its, I think, is it 8 gig RAM? ASAD, correct me if I'm wrong.
10, isn't it?
Is it 10?
Yeah, 16 for the X and 10 for.
Yeah, it's, like you said, I don't have a ton of experience developing for consoles, but I know that kind of thing can cause problems. I know, with TerraGenesis, I developed it originally for iOS, and then we brought it to Android, and oh my God, the number of Android phones. Yeah. There's like 60,000 different models of Android phones across the world that are in active circulation, and the OS fragmentation is insane. Like when you make an app for the iPhone, it runs on iPhones. And when you make an app for the Android, you have to support these like random phones that were made in 1964 and only are offered in Lithuania, and like if you don't, then you're going to get overwhelmed by customer support messages, and because apparently everybody in the world lives in Lithuania in the 60s, and it's crazy. And so that kind of thing, I know from experience, there have been features that we've been like, hey, this would be really cool, but we can't add it because it only runs on the very newest iPhones. And so why bother adding this cool new feature that isn't going to be able to run for so many of our players? So that kind of thing that developers are talking about with the Xbox Series S, I think it could cause a problem, because why would you develop a cool new feature if it's only going to run on the X and not on the S? And now you've got fragmentation of features at best, or a customer service nightmare at worst. It could be a real drag on how much developers want to innovate.
Yeah, I think a lot depends there. So the way that Microsoft are positioning it, because a lot of the architecture is common between Series X and the Series S, what they're saying is that you'd build it for the Series X, and everything that's in there is very specifically set so that you can scale down the resolution and not actually change the feature set at all. There's a lot of argument around the internet at the moment as to whether that's possible or not. And it will. The proof's going to be in the pudding, and there are some developers using it, so it's a shame they haven't come out to be more forthcoming about what they had to do with the S version. But there's lots of tricks that Microsoft have up their sleeve to try and make it feasible.
It's one of those things where it's like you can target kind of the main body of apps, but I guarantee you some game out there is going to become all the rage, and it's going to be based on some architecture feature that is only possible on the X, and it can't be scaled down to the S. It's just inevitable. Like, that kind of thing is just, you can't.
But that makes severe compromises to the S.
Everything on different specs.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could, you would just have the X have those specs. You know, it's not something that I just know that there are going to be complications, and that's worrisome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a bit more positive because Jason Ronald and the team have talked about scalability. The Xbox Series S is basically seen as a 1080p/1440p console, less RAM, so maybe it will. But I do suspect later on, with the deficit in RAM, that you might see more intricate games, like you say, run well on Xbox Series X. That will have to have compromises made on the S version. That might be quite fundamental to the user experience of it. Who knows?
It depends. It depends because the specs that they're talking about, they do have. So they've got their SFS, their velocity architecture and things like that should automate a lot of the downscaling. And so a lot of the things that it's actually limited on are the GPU resource, so the number of shaders and things. And it's got a bit less RAM and a bit less bandwidth. And in theory, they've got all of these technologies that are intelligently providing textures already. And I think if all goes according to Microsoft's master plan, hopefully it just works with minimal effort. In practice, they've based those targets on the Series X running a game at 4K and the S running at a 1440p or somewhere between 1080 and 1440. And as soon as you change that Series X profile, so Series X maybe doesn't hit 4K because the game is that demanding, then those numbers don't make sense anymore. So I think hopefully, and it's a really difficult task that they've set themselves, but if they hit it, I think it will work very well most of the time. And it's an exceptional proposition anyway to get a what is a next-gen console for £250 over here or $300 over there. It's an amazing offer, especially given what they're saying you have to compromise to use it, and it's not a lot. In practice, though, I think, like Alexander says, there's inevitably going to be fringe cases that cause problems. So.
Ben, I never know how to pronounce that one. Ben X Moku. So Ben, thank you for joining chat. Hi, I hope you're well. So let's jump into Heather's favorite platform, because that's going to be the one that's going to be breaking news on Wednesday. It's you must be excited. It's the showcase event at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Are you excited for that one? What a silly question I just asked.
I mean, it's always exciting when a new console cycle happens. I won't lie though, I'm not the one that kind of rushes in to go and buy a new console. I like to wait a few years, because even though I was never an Xbox person, the red ring is just I think it just lives with us, right? Like that whole red ring scare, where so I don't usually rush in to go grab a console. The first time I've done that in recent history was the Switch and Joy-Con drift. So
I've got
I should have just stuck to my guns. But it's always exciting, new console. How can you not want to be excited?
Are there any particular games that you're excited that are coming out for the PlayStation 5?
Yeah, Stray is finally coming out. I've been watching this game for 4 years. It's where you play a cat in the streets of Hong Kong. It's like a futuristic kind of game. And I mean, Hong Kong is just such an interesting city. It's I've been there. Past, present, future of Hong Kong just is always exciting. And it's an indie game by Annapurna Interactive is the publisher. They're just killing it with their indies. Really excited for that one.
Yeah, that bounced out at me as well. That was revealed at the PlayStation 5 reveal event, wasn't it? It looked really cool. Just dying to see a bit more gameplay. But you knew about it before we did, because I know last time we were on the show, you've been following.
I mean, it's one of those games that you hear about. I mean, this was back when I was looking through Steam Greenlight, when that was still a thing. And that had come out, and I was like, oh wow, this looks interesting and really different. And then just we didn't hear about it for a really long time. And I'm like, okay, is it gone? And then to see it again, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's back. Was very excited.
What about yourself, Alex? I know you don't play much on console, or you do play on console, but are you following it on console quite a bit? Is there PlayStation 5 you're excited about?
For me, the two that I'm looking forward to the most, I'm a really big history nerd, so I'm always down for the next Assassin's Creed.
Oh yeah.
This next one, I mean, Vikings are fun. It'll be interesting to see because despite a lot of people hating on Odyssey, I was in love with Assassin's Creed Odyssey because I'm huge on ancient Greece.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the Viking setting feels. But I'm really looking forward to that. And then the other is I was the last person in the world to fall in love with Horizon Zero Dawn. It happened about a month ago, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm all of a sudden really excited for that too. Plus, it looks like it's going to be set in California, which is always fun when there's a game set in a place that you live, and so you can be like, oh, that's L.A. Noire had the same kind of appeal for Los Angelinos. So,
where in California do you live, by the way?
Los Angeles.
Oh wow, okay. So did the smog and all that stuff affect you guys?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's a layer of ash on my car right now. The skies are yellow and cloudy, and the sun looks like the eye of Sauron peering through bright red.
Like the end of days, but not to scare you or anything.
Yeah, no, it's pretty freaky to walk outside. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, Horizon Forbidden West is a game that's probably one of the strongest, most eagerly anticipated PlayStation 5 exclusive that we've seen. Not that much gameplay that's on screen right now for me. Moby says that he's heard also, and I've heard this as well, that there may be a couple of new launch titles game. I didn't know they were launch titles. Asa, did you hear about launch titles for the PlayStation 5?
I've not heard any rumors of new ones being added to it. No.
Yeah. Moby's usually pretty clued up on his PlayStation news, so we'll take that for take your word on that, Moby. But yeah, so what are your general expectations on next-gen consoles? I know Heather, so me personally, I like indies because I think they take risks and they do something that's different. But what would you like generally the next-gen console to do that we haven't seen now in this gen? Is it something, some area that gaming needs to take strides in that's being a bit more, lackadaisical about, or just neglected for the sake of, I don't know, pretty graphics?
I mean, so as a player, I think the joy of indies is always being kind of like finding the gem, like the hidden gem. So while I really do appreciate a lot of the stuff that some of these platforms try to do for indies, they tend to push like the same indies, like the same, like as much as like Devolver Digital and Annapurna Interactive, I love their stuff. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But it starts to become an issue when those are the only indie games that get pushed, is like from these big publishers that obviously have a lot of resources behind them.
Yeah.
And you start to wonder, like just hearing Alex's story about how he came up with like, I was just a solo indie developer. Those are where real like amazing gems come from sometimes. And I want to see more resources for those people instead of like, just constantly pushing like these massive teams.
That is a fairly interesting point because most of the features in these new gen consoles, so they've got these really impressive hard drives and all of this stuff that they can stream a whole ton of textures and art and assets into the game. And as an indie studio, can you even use that? Can you can use it, but can you put the art together? Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. Unreal has a library of super high-res textures that you can access. Unity has the Unity Asset Store. And of course, there are third-party companies that have that kind of thing. It can be hard, especially for super indies. Like if you've only got one or two devs, how much time are you really going to be dedicating to making sure that the cobblestone roads have like, specular highlights? And but it is the kind of thing that there are tools being developed alongside this hardware to allow greater access to it without having to reinvent the wheel every time.
Oh no. What about yourself, Alex? Though, what would you like to see next gen gaming, take a leap in? If this current gen that's gone by It's kind of strange to think about what it's done. Next gen is all about loading times being non-existent on consoles, but what else is there? Do you think we need to make strides in something else?
The thing that's most interesting to me is, I lived through sort of perfectly the sort of graphics craze. I remember my first N64 when it was 3D, and then every generation was going for better and better graphics. And the thing that I had this realization a month or two ago when the Unreal demo came out, the sort of Tomb Raider-esque video of the woman making her way through an ancient temple. And all of a sudden I looked up and realized they're kind of done with graphics. Like, this looks photorealistic. If I took a still from this demo and showed it to my mom, not only would she believe it was real, I could not convince her it wasn't. The faces aren't quite there yet, but as far as the environment goes, there's not a lot more to brag about after this generation. So the thing that I'm the most interested, rather than sort of pinpointing one thing that I want the game industry to move toward, I'm interested to see what the game industry comes up with to brag about. Because when you can't do, PS4 and PS5 comparisons because it's just a photo of Montana, like Red Dead Redemption 6 is just gonna look like Red Dead Redemption 5 because they both look real. I'm interested to see what becomes the bragging point at that point. There is obviously, more agents on screen at once. We've got a battle with 10,000 characters. One area where I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation is procedural content, not just procedural environments like No Man's Sky, which, as everyone knows, started out rocky, but then just got better and better. And like these days, it's really impressive. But I'm talking about procedural storylines, that sort of thing. So the developers don't have to carefully handcraft every mission, that you can have a system that can just sort of lay the tracks down in front of the train. Things like that, I think are going to be really exciting. But yeah, the thing that is really sticking in my mind these days is that there's not a lot more to do when it comes to graphic advancement.
Yeah. What about you, Sean? Because we talk about this quite a bit. Graphics. But what other areas do you think next gen should?
So I like more interaction. So the Kinect was the thing, and I actually bought the Xbox because of the Kinect. I wanted the Kinect, and I actually used it quite a lot. And that obviously kind of bombed, and people hated on it and all that kind of stuff. I liked that kind of next level of. So I agree with the graphics 100%. I think that you've got to a level now where it's not really going to add too much to the gameplay, but where you have more immersion, VR is obviously a thing, but where you have more immersion, more interaction, I kind of want to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I think that was perhaps a bit lacking in the last gen. Didn't see that much. I know VR is making strides, and again, VR is probably where it's going to happen more. But yeah, stuff like more involvement.
In immersion, like that Ready Player One kind of. That's the Zen gaming, isn't it? That kind of
I read an interesting article a year or two or three ago that said that the really impressive thing about Iron Man is not his armor, it's his user interface. Because if you try to think about, okay, I'm wearing a suit of armor, like what does he do to fire a missile?
Yeah.
He doesn't say it out loud because we can hear his voice. There's no like controls. There's no what exactly is he doing to turn on his thrusters? There's an indication that he does like that and it activates a repulsor, but like there's so many things that suit can do seemingly just by thought.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a big sticking point for a lot of games is, like you were saying, the players are going to want more interaction, but there are only so many buttons. Like, how do you tell the console, I want to pick up this rock and throw it at that guy? Like, I want to, all of these things. There's going to be an interesting arc of figuring out how to control a world that is as detailed as the computer is now capable of projecting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Dread Knight in the comment actually goes further, touches on that very point. he says it's immersion, what you were saying as well. I think that's what the next the next thing to do. Both Microsoft and Sony, he says, are going all in on audio coupled with super fast loading. They can keep gamers immersed with more consistency. That's one way of thinking of it. Moby says Unreal Engine 5's procedural animations are going to be really good for indie devs. No need for motion capture. Also, something like Omniverse from NVIDIA will allow you to capture face cameras and rig it into in-game models. So, that's how tech's kind of making it easier for indie devs to really go ahead and leverage that tech. But they'll, back to the topic of, what's next beyond the graphics. It really is immersion. All this talk is going to make Asa really giddy because he loves VR.
I do love VR.
And he defends it madly, even though we're all ignorant to it.
Not too madly, but yeah, no, I've got a new one coming in the near future, the HP Reverb G2. And yeah, in terms of interacting with the world and figuring out the control issues, obviously VR's got its own challenges there, but you want to throw that rock, you reach your hand in and you throw that rock.
Yeah. And then, see, that's the thing, that when VR reaches a level where I still think it's missing that Zen moment, that Ready Player One, that
haptic stuff, that haptic feedback kind of feel,
that's gonna be huge.
Or something that gives you more touch sensation.
When someone punches you in the throat, you want to feel like you're dying. That kind of thing.
You should have said, Gaz, next time I see you.
Star Trek Bridge Command is a VR game where 4 players can be on the bridge of a Star Trek game. And it's fascinating because I had never before played a VR game where you are playing a VR game using a user interface. Like there's a console in front of you and you're in VR, you're pressing buttons and using sliders. And so it sort of added an extra layer of possibility there because you're not constrained by a controller. It's sort of like what the iPhone did, where all of a sudden you could make whatever you wanted on that screen. You weren't constrained to the buttons on the phone. Yeah. And in that same way, now you can have that Iron Man experience of just pull up a blue HUD and add whatever buttons you want for the player to use.
Yeah, exactly. It's out of the 2 console makers, I think PlayStation, the one that deserves a bit of credit here, a lot more credit, because they do take virtual reality seriously, or as seriously as anyone else is taking it. As far as the software is concerned, Microsoft hasn't even really dabbled on it other than on the PC side with its Windows Mixed Reality headsets. But nothing on console yet, although that might be more of a wait and see approach. Ace, I see you ready to attack me. Tell me why.
No. You're right in the console space. Microsoft obviously are steering well clear of it and haven't pushed it forwards. But to say they haven't dabbled in it and don't have any software is false, because the Windows Mixed Reality ecosystem is there and works.
Yeah.
And the headsets work, the controllers work. They've got a lot going on in the PC space, but it is massively frustrating that I can't put on the headset and play Forza. So there's definitely a different level of commitment. They're taking a different approach to Sony.
Yeah, true.
Also, to that credit, I just wanted to add a little bit, is that what Sony tends to do, like historically speaking, is they don't truly, they try to jump on a fad, right? Yeah. So like PlayStation Move, I don't know if you guys remember that. That was like the answer to the Wii nunchucks, and so like they notice something, they really quickly develop it and they get it to market. But that's kind of how I felt with PlayStation VR, was like, okay, are you going to keep supporting this, or is this just going to be another like iToy or Move? Like, I wasn't sure. So when I bought VR, I actually did buy an Oculus, which now with the Facebook stuff, I'm like, I regret it.
A lot of people do.
It just needs a Halo, basically. When the Xbox came out and then Halo happened, the Xbox was secure, and mobile gaming or online gaming flourished. VR is just waiting for that one game that everybody has to have.
Beat Saber.
Soon as it comes out.
Beat Saber. That is why I bought it.
Beat Saber is great, but Beat Saber is not a craze the way Halo was. Like people beating down the doors to buy it and that sort of thing.
Okay,
as soon as there's one game like that, everybody's gonna jump onto it, and all of a sudden it'll be secure forever.
The DDR fans disagree.
This week also saw Ubisoft Forward event. They've had a few of these, which has been a really good kind of break from all this COVID-19 lockdown nonsense. So it's a nice glimmer of hope with things. Although, to be fair, and my friend works at Ubisoft, I'm sorry, but the shows haven't been all that great, in my opinion. At Ubisoft Forward this time, they showed off Immortals Phoenix Rising, which was formerly called Gods and Monsters. Why they've changed that name to such a shit name, but don't ask me why. But everyone almost, in unison is like, kind of just a bit apathetic to that name. It's like, well, what's that about? When I saw the gameplay trailer, I actually wanted to talk to you, Heather, about it, because have you seen the gameplay footage for Immortals Phoenix Rising?
I watched the trailer for it. It definitely was like one of those games that it's like, what is this? You know?
It's clone, that's what it is.
Yeah.
If you watch the gameplay's pouring out now for it, and if you're a Breath of the Wild fan, I know you are, then you're going to see very startling resemblance to Breath of the Wild, almost to the point where it's actually kind of copying it, in my opinion. But have you had a chance to look at that, Alex? I know it just came out.
I haven't watched the videos. I did read the GameOnDaily interview about it and was charmed by the degree to which they weren't addressing Breath of the Wild. They did an admirable job of pivoting away from that every time it came up in the interview.
Yeah.
But I am looking forward to this game because I'm a huge Assassin's Creed Odyssey fan. I'm a huge Greek mythology fan, and there just aren't that many games about you. Like for the degree to which Greek mythology looms large in the popular imagination, if you actually go and look for the games, there's like God of War and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and then there was like this Jason and the Argonauts game from like 2002, and there's like it's not as wide as you would kind of imagine. So I'm excited about this game from the people who worked on Assassin's Creed Odyssey to bring us more of a mythological take.
Does the cartoony kind of look not damper it a bit because of the, or do you think that's a good take on the mythology?
It dampens it a little bit for me, but I am a deep nerd.
Yeah.
So I recognize that for the average person, this art style is probably more attractive. I enjoyed Assassin's Creed Odyssey with its a little bit more realistic take, but then again, I stay up late on Thursday nights reading Wikipedia articles about the Bronze Age collapse. So, yeah.
Hey, that's not bad. Educating ourselves, we do a lot worse at. Wait, that sounds wrong. Another game that was shown off was the Prince of Persia remake. Asa, before I go into what are your thoughts on that game? Because to me, it looked kind of shoddy.
Prince of Persia or
Prince of Persia. Well, actually, yeah. What do you think about Immortals Phoenix Rising?
I quite like the look of it. It's colourful. Got no problem with a colourful game. And as you say, we've got an awful lot of Norse mythology in games, but Greek mythology gets left behind a little bit. But yeah, I think I'll give that one a good go. It comes out fairly soon, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, well, it's coming out December 3rd, I think.
Which is a bit of a conflict with the new consoles. And there might be a fair few things to play at that point in time, but no, I like the look of this one. I'll give it a go. Prince of Persia, on the other hand, I saw I haven't put too much thought into it, but I saw that Ubisoft said it was their first attempt at a remake or remaster of one of their old games. I'm not sure the first one's going to work for them. They might need to try a bit harder next time.
Yeah, because I think it's Ubisoft India who are working on. So it's a new studio set up there, which is cool. But the game itself looks a bit, it didn't impress me. But I think they might have to retry that. Did you ever play the original Prince of Persia games?
No.
Yeah, well, that was the chance to do it. I don't know if you'll like it. Dread Knight says it looks like Sadeki. I think he's talking about Immortals Phoenix Rising. Riders Republic, which is a game, brand new IP from Ubisoft, looks really cool. It's a extreme sports game, 50-player races, and it just looks a bit manic. We need to see a little bit more, but I love that kind of stuff. I love more extreme. We don't see many sports games or that kind of extreme sports games. I still think of SSX Tricky, that game was just so cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, and like now Tony Hawk's has come out. That's really cool. That's a remake though. But Heather, did you have a chance to check out the trailer for Riders Republic?
I mean, as much as it's just not that I'm not really interested in like sports games very much, I have to say. Like unless it's like Tony Hawk or like you said SSX, like it's just not.
Yeah, no, I mean early days anyway, and I don't. Yeah, it's going to be very select taste for it, but I do think it's a bit fresh. It's confirmed 60 frames per second on next gen consoles, which is a big thing. Which I actually wanted to ask you guys about, particularly you, Alex. Next gen, everyone's talking about frames per second over resolution. Frames. How important is frame rate? And I think you will say yes, it is, because your game was running at 600 frames on ACPC.
I was actually gonna mention at some point. Yeah, if you could put a little cap on that, it would be nice.
Well, that's good to know. But no, I'm actually, I'm the guy who doesn't spend money for 3D movies because the movie's always 3D in my head. Like I stopped noticing the 3D movie. And so frame rate for me is pretty much the same way. It's like, as long as it's above like 15 frames per second, it all just like my mind goes into the game and I'm experiencing the game. I'm not the kind of guy who sort of notices that kind of thing very much.
So you're in the game even at 15 frames, and you're in the movie.
Well, it's like 15 frames is where it starts to become problematic. Like if I've got a game that is lagging so hard I can't play, then obviously I notice. But if it's like the difference between 30 frames and 60 frames and 90 frames for me is like academic. As a player, as a developer, I obviously recognize that this matters to people, and so I need to put some effort into it. Yeah. It's not like we've ever struggled with lag in TerraGenesis. But on those Lithuanian phones from the 1960s. Yeah. I've got I think sitting at the top of my to-do list in our work thing is something that says lag, and then it's followed by, in parentheses, something like 5,294 reports.
Oh my god.
So
the best of luck
I definitely understand the importance, but in terms of my own player preferences, as long as I can watch it, I don't really notice the difference.
Okay. That's interesting. Heather, are you in the same boat, or are you a bit of a frame rate fiend like we are? Yeah.
No, I don't really care. But that's only because I think that's just, as a player, I'm more interested in indies anyway. And I mean, some of the indies that you play are like made with RPG Maker. Like, what do you care about frame rate? Like, like it doesn't matter to me. I'm in the.
Go ahead.
I'm in the lag camp, obviously. Like, I want to be able to play the game, but frame rate, I don't care.
Yeah, I think for Heather and I both, part of it is just choice of game, because like my number one mainstay go-to game is Civilization. Yeah. And who cares about frame rate in Civilization? Yeah. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So
it depends on the type of game, like Sam said. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're playing Halo competitively, then frame rate matters with a capital M. I just don't tend to play that kind of game, so.
Yeah. Moby, by the way, Alex is asking about TerraGenesis, saying, what engine is that game made in? Is it Unity?
Originally, I made it as a native iOS app, just with the iOS, I wrote it in Xcode using Objective-C. And then when we decided to bring it to Android, I had the very fun task of completely remaking the game from the ground up, line by line, every single line of code, porting it over into C# and Unity so that we could bring it to Android. So these days, if you play TerraGenesis, even on iOS, it's a Unity game. But that was only true about 2 years after it came out.
Oh, okay. I'll touch in. Actually, it's a good segue into it now. I was going to ask you about TerraGenesis later on, but I can do that now. You had update 5.0, which you were working quite hard to push, which you have now. What's in store next for TerraGenesis? So we've been doing a lot of sort of tightening up the ship recently, fixing bugs and that sort of thing. The Unity
move to Unity, like I mentioned, was great in a lot of ways because it meant that we could come to new platforms, but it was also sort of an ongoing nightmare because I was in this weird limbo between being a developer for 8 years or whatever it was when I first made TerraGenesis, but also this was my first ever Unity game. Okay. And so if you read, like if you look at the code for TerraGenesis, it kind of feels like you're reading an English novel that was originally written in German, where like some of the sentence structure is a little weird. And I've had a lot of developers look at my code and be like, why did you do it this way? Yeah. And the answer is always, because that's how it works on iOS. Like, so we've had a long road of fixing bugs and just sort of learning Unity. And that's what we've been focusing on recently. We have been adding new things since 5.0. We've been adding new characters, new governors. We added lava worlds recently, which was a lot of fun. Some players called me out for the fact that my really realistic game, you could heat a planet up indefinitely. So I decided to go in and add lava, so now you can actually melt your planet and that sort of thing. So we've been adding features like that along the road. We do have some cool stuff coming up, but nothing that we've announced yet. But so far it's just been, incremental fixes and general improvements and coming to Windows.
He's just playing it live on stream right now. I think he's trying to terraform the sun.
The sun, no, it's just Mars. It's just Mars. But it is still quite a dry rock at the moment.
It's literally watching grass grow, just so you're aware. Like, that's the game.
That's how Heather likes to market TerraGenesis, is come watch grass grow on Mars.
I thought that, and then you threw a meteor at my city.
Oh, sorry.
So the next topic, actually, this is going to be your cup of tea, Heather, because we're going to just wrap up with the indie showcase. Now, also my favorite bit as well. But this kind of starts off with really good game, okay game, and kind of maybe not so great. And incidentally, these are, and actually didn't purposely do this, but they turned out to be your reviews or Hair Poor Players reviews. Let's start off on a high. Let's start talking about.
Let's say Not Alone.
Yeah. Yeah, Not Alone. There's a Paradise Killer game that I haven't played it, but I checked the trailer and I love the music. And I read your review, and then they start talking about vaporwave. And you please explain to me what the hell that is, because that didn't make sense to me.
It's okay. A lot of vaporwave purposefully doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, it's just, if you were to look at it, like, I think I sent you a YouTube video. The most iconic vaporwave song is Lisa Frank 420 / Modern Computing. And if you heard it, you might recognize it because it's been in some Vine videos. It's been in some YouTube stuff. But you might recognize, like, okay, there's a marble statue, there's some checkered floors, I see palm trees, pyramids, dolphins, like a lot of random assets, and they're just kind of thrown together in a very aesthetic way.
But vaporwave is music, right? Is it music, or is it something else, or just sounds like an LSD trip?
It's kind of just a subculture. Okay. And the premise, like
there's an art component for sure.
Yeah, you could literally just take those two, the music and art components, and just say, like, that's all I enjoy. And the movement's okay with that, because what it generally aimed for was this notion that if capitalism was to get its way, creativity would just not be a thing. Like, it would just cease to exist in the forms that it does. So it took elements from consumerism and just said, like, this is all you get type thing. It ironically made it really aesthetic, and it birthed other movements. Lo-fi is probably one you're more familiar with.
Oh yeah, I've got to play.
Yeah, they're quite different, but to like people who just kind of listen to both, they're like, well, how? And one is lo-fi kind of puts you in a headspace where you're like, oh man, rainy days and just chilling like in your bed, and you've got like, a cup of tea and like a cat. Like, that's kind of how I feel. Whereas vaporwave kind of makes you nostalgic for a place that doesn't exist. And it's like a place that you've never been to type thing. And the experiences are quite different. Definitely my favorite subculture.
I need to look into it because I'm a big music fiend, and that sounds like up my. I was reading the review. I was thinking, well, this sounds cool, and then I'm watching Paradise Killer, and I thought, wicked vibes from that. How have I not explored this? I think you're right. We've touched upon that, maybe in popular culture or maybe in other bits. But yeah, I mean, going back to the Paradise Killer, how does that harness this wait? It's a hard to pronounce.
So first of all, it's actually, the game itself is made by Kaizen Gameworks, which is 2 indie developers who actually had AAA game experience, and this is their first game that they've made together, and they're based in the UK.
Yeah, in the UK.
Yeah, and I think they started in 2018. So the fact that they got this out pretty quick, I mean, if you've seen even a trailer of the game, like kudos, man. Yeah.
2 people, did you say?
I'm sorry?
Is that 2-man team?
They had more people on it, but it was created by these 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like Kaizen Gameworks is founded by these 2 guys. And how it utilizes Vaporwave is that it's like literally the perfect embodiment of it. And another journalist who I have their article up, his name is Kudo by finalweapon.net. He just went into this amazing detail about how it's like Vaporwave personified. So it uses all the assets that we're used to. So like the palm trees, the pyramids, like all that stuff. But it puts some cohesion to it. So I don't know if you played, I'm going to slaughter the name. It's either Verlet or Verlet Swing.
No.
It's another Vaporwave game from 2018. And you're just kind of swinging around a lot of Vaporwave assets. But there's no cohesion. It doesn't make sense.
Do you think the devs set out to achieve, that they have Vaporwave as their manifesto, and this is it, we were trying to embody this phenomenon, or they just happen to create something that happens to kind of line up with what Vaporwave is?
I think they had to have set out to do it because of how perfectly it embodies it. It's not only in its aesthetic, it makes it cohesive, it puts reason and meaning to the assets, and it also, in its core message, 2 core messages. One is the player gets to direct all of their investigations. This is a player-directed investigation that doesn't follow a single storyline. You can do it as you see fit, and so it's very exploration-based. Okay. It prides itself on truth and facts are not the same. You'll find evidence, and when you go into your investigation or into your trial, if you have enough evidence to pinpoint like 3 different people for one crime, you can choose who you want to choose. So as long as your narrative, like the way you talk about the evidence, fits the person you're trying to pin the crime on, it'll become fact.
Okay.
So it's like really different in terms of an investigation game. It's just put it on its head.
The soundtrack really cool as well, because the trailer soundtrack is amazing.
Oh, soundtrack's phenomenal. It's got this future funk city pop vibe. I mean, it's like, it's not Vaporwave in the sense that when you think it, like, you know, Saint Pepsi comes to mind, like at least for me. Yeah. But it's got like that other sound that Vaporwave really loves. Amazing soundtrack.
Well, so you had glowing praise for the game. Would you recommend it to people who want to actually understand what Vaporwave is? Would this be a good game to kind of dip in your toe into, or is there beyond Vaporwave? Is there an appeal to the Paradise Killer?
I think everyone should try it, with the caveat being that it is very complicated in terms of in lore. It's one of the most lore-rich games that I've played in recent history. Okay. So it's okay to not understand it from the get-go.
Okay.
But if you enjoy investigation games and if you enjoy open world running around, and like you just kind of want to decompress from like another game, like this is it. This is a great game to play.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
A game that I don't know if it was you who reviewed this, but this was on Hey Poor Player. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to not have a go at it, but Gleamlight is the game. And Yeah, you didn't review that well. It's out. You did a review on the Switch. What did you review that game?
Which one is it?
Gleam Light.
I did play that one. That was a while ago though.
Yeah, so that visually it looks nice, but can you just, because we want to be a bit fair and cover everything, not all good news. Why should people kind of avoid this game? I think generally we said the game might not be finished or incomplete.
Oh, as a player, I feel like I have to tell people like when you come across a bad game, but like as a developer, this like I don't think you understand how much this hurts. Like it hurts to talk poorly about a game.
Yeah.
Because
we're not developers, so we don't.
I know. Just that's why I said. I know. That's why I said in my review, I was like, the sheer amount of work that goes into a game, like I have a utmost respect for a shipped game.
Yeah.
But the concept and the execution just didn't quite work.
Yeah.
So Gleamlight was made by Japanese developer Deco.
Yeah.
And it was priding itself in this notion that it was telling a story with no text and no UI.
Yeah.
Which if you can get that to work, hey man, I'm like awesome, because
I hate that.
Sounds awesome.
I love, minimal UIs in games. I just like, in a game like, it depends on the game, obviously. You can't play TerraGenesis without UI. I think it would just be floating in space.
Oh my gosh, no, it's all text-based and menu-based.
Yeah.
Menu-based games.
Yeah,
but with Gleamlight, I didn't even know you could do certain jumps or certain movements unless I went into the start menu and looked at the control scheme, and they would add little moves as time went on.
Yeah.
And it was just too subtle.
Yeah.
And it just the level design was also kind of bad. Like there would be points where you would have to go through little tunnels, and there would be spikes in the floor, spikes in the ceiling, and you could not avoid them. You would get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's like, who designed this? Like,
I hate that. The kind of like trial and error thing that they force upon you, that you have to fail in order to do that. The first Ori did this, Ori and the Blind Forest. No, I didn't really like that, and dropped a few points when I was reviewing games for that. So I understand that completely. It looked really nice, so I didn't read your review. I thought, oh, okay, well, that's a shame. But those are the exact niggles that really annoy me in games. So yeah, it's good. We have to take the good and the bad. So we'd like to be fair here at GameOnDaily. But now from bad, going back to good, and to wrap up the show, because we've gone past our hour mark. Alex, can you tell everyone in the viewers where they can find you? Tell us a little bit about TerraGenesis for people who haven't played it, why they would want to play TerraGenesis, and what's in store in the future.
Yeah, TerraGenesis is available on iOS, Android, and on the Microsoft Store on Windows. And it's a single-player terraforming game where you can basically decide the fate of a planet. You can take a planet like Mars or even Earth, and you can play with the climate. You can raise and lower the sea level. You can heat it up or cool it down, turn it into an ice ball, or melt it into a ball of lava, and build your society. You can also craft the culture of your civilization and all that sort of thing. So it's a really awesome science-based look at how the exploration of space might actually go down.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love sci-fi. I think this is Sham's, like literally down Sham's road. So I think we'll be talking about it. We always talk about terraforming. The name itself was cool. I think the other thing that did it, we had this animation to terraform the planet, almost like, carving up the planet. So I thought it's a really cool idea that you came up with, and then you built a whole game about that. So that's pretty cool. Where can people find you on social media if they have any questions? I'm sure you get enough questions.
Yeah, we have TerraGenesis, Edgeworks Entertainment, and Alexander Winn. There are Facebook pages. I'm on Twitter at Alex for the Win with 2 N's. And we've got a YouTube channel where we're going to be releasing more content soon. And yeah, just search TerraGenesis on pretty much any platform known to man.
Cool, thank you. And Heather, where can people find you and tell us a bit more about April Player?
So you don't have to go looking for me. It's okay. Like you can just bother Alex instead. No, I'm just kidding. you can find me, I guess I'm on Twitter at Heather J Rock, if you want to talk to me. And then TerraGenesis and all that stuff, you'll find me there too. And yeah, Hey Poor Player is at Twitter, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Thank you, John. For people who tuned in, thank you so much. Thank you, Ben. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. And yeah, check us out at GameOnDaily.com, where all the gaming news is funneled into one nice and tidy place. We'll be having a lot more videos. Check out our TLDR videos every Friday, expertly crafted by Acer. And yeah, before we go out, let's just get Acer Walker, who's been quietly playing TerraGenesis as we've been talking. Acer, where can people find you, sir?
Where can people find me? I am on every platform that you can think of as Acer_GameOnDaily. So yeah. Twitch, Xbox, PlayStation, Twitter, Mixer probably, if you can time travel. I don't know, everywhere, same name, easy to find.
Yeah, no, perfect. What have you been playing recently? I think you've been playing, what was it? Sorry,
I finished, yeah, so Tell Me Why was the one that you jumped into yesterday, with Ben helpfully interjecting that it was just like The Last of Us Part 2. It really isn't. And yeah, I've been trying to get through the Avengers and still trying to play Fire Emblem as well. So those are the ones that I'm plugging away at, but not had as much time as I'd like this last week.
Yeah, no, we get to talk a lot about games, but it seems like we don't get to play them as much. I think the devs can appreciate that. They don't play games, they just develop them now. So I do feel for you. So yeah, but apart from Heather, she has like 16 consoles in her bag. So it's
see, you don't sleep. That's the thing. You just don't sleep.
Yeah, it's true. But thank you guys. Thank you so much. It was honestly an honor and pleasure to have you guys here. Heather, again, thank you so much for joining us. Alex, absolute pleasure to have a dev of Propeller on board. And yeah, thank guys, you. Please do like, share, hit that like button, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.